Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Despite all the turmoil in federal contracting over the last year, agencies surpassed the 23% government-wide goal for awards to small businesses in fiscal 2025. The Small Business Administration said last Thursday that agencies awarded 28% of all prime contracts to small firms last year. While agencies reached the overall goal, the total dollars going to small businesses dropped to $179 billion last year from $183.5 billion in 2024. For more on SBA's 2025 Small Business Scorecard, Federal News Network's executive editor Jason Miller joins me now to discuss. Jason, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, so how surprised were you from these results from SBA, and which agencies shined in terms of involving more small businesses in their activities?
I have to say, covering the small business environment now for the better part of the last 20 plus years, Eric, I was a bit surprised that agencies met that 23% goal. Not just met it, but really did exceed it. 28% of all prime contracts. Now, Eric, we know a couple things about the small business goals. It's called the addressable market, right? So that is how much money is can a small business win and expect to do. So they take out for something. The F-35 airplane is not a small business market. So that dollar amount is taken out. And the reason why that's important to show is because the amount of money spent on federal procurement in 2025 actually went up. The Government Accountability Office reported in June that agencies spent about $793 billion on contracts in 2025. That's about $40 billion more than what they spent in 2024. But again, Eric, it goes about to the idea of the addressable market. So that $179 billion that agencies spent in 2025 on small businesses, that 28% of the prime contracts, is what they could relatively be considered eligible to bid on and win. As for the agencies that did quite well, 16 agencies out of the top 24 all got what they call A grades, and 3 got A plus grades. GSA, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Commerce Department all received A plus grades. That's achieving 120% or more of their specific goal. And if you earned an A grade, 16 agencies, again, they would mean they got at least 100% of their goal. 3 agencies got B grades: NASA, the National Science Foundation, and the Social Security Administration. And a B grade is when you don't achieve 100% of your internal goal. So, and no agency got below a B grade. So overall, it looked like pretty good numbers across the board.
With those numbers, if we provide further analysis, what did agencies do and how did they look, not with just small businesses, but going across all the socioeconomic categories now that there are, as there were some different stipulations to different classifications this time around?
Absolutely. They did change the goal set, the goal for 2025 when it came to small business contracting. One of the first things the administration did is come in for the small disadvantaged business and said, okay, the Biden administration had set a 15% goal for SDBs. They knocked that down to the statutory requirement of 5%. Agencies still did quite well, awarding 11.6% for about $75.3 billion to small disadvantaged businesses. Now, again, this is lower than what we saw in 2024 when agencies did about 12.3%. So about a 0.5% drop in overall and about $3 billion in total dollars going to them. Now, when you break down SDBs, Eric, you know you have 8As program. People in the 8A program are part of the SDB bigger category. And the 8A program saw a huge decrease, $1.5 billion fewer contract awards to these 8A companies. That's down to from about $24.3 billion in 2025. So quite a bit of a decrease. And a lot of that is attributed by the scrutiny and the audits that SBA has been applying to the 8A program. Eric, we've reported time and again that there are fewer firms now, and there are fewer, they've reduced the number of sole source awards. They've reduced the number of non-competitive awards to 8A programs. I think that is part of that. Surprisingly, there's also decreases across the board in all socioeconomic categories, not just small disadvantaged businesses. For example, the administration's been focused on service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and they saw a decrease, about just $300 million less spent with them, and just over 5%. So they hit the goal, but down from 5.14% of all contract awards going to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. And again, this comes despite SBA saying it cleared its backlog of about 2,700 veteran small business certification applications that had built up over time. One other interesting thing as well, Eric, is HubZone and women-owned business firms both also saw decreases. Agencies missed the 3% government-wide goal for HubZone firms for at least the 6th year in a row, down from only 2.66% of those contracts going to HubZone firms. And for women-owned small businesses, again, they have a 5% goal. They came in at 4.2%. So again, missing the government-wide goal and dropping back from 4.97% in 2024. So yes, they all did quite well, but several missed their goals for government-wide and several saw big drops in total spending.
Talking here with Federal News Network Executive Editor Jason Miller. What was the impact on the industrial base in those socioeconomic categories, and which ones were affected the most by the drop in dollars?
What we saw across the board is most of the socioeconomic categories from the industrial base perspective saw decreases. And I think that's also concerning because one of the big things is this administration and the last one have been trying to really get more companies into the industrial base, both the defense industrial base and the broader civilian industrial base. You see this change, Eric, for instance, with the revolutionary FAR overhaul that this administration is putting out there. Hey, reduce the burden. Let's make it easier for companies to do business with the government. The use of other transaction agreements, OTAs, again, trying to make it easier, less burdensome, less paperwork. But we still saw a big drop. So, for instance, small disadvantaged businesses had about 1,100 firms dropping out of the federal market last year. When you look at HubZone firms, right, they dropped by about 80 companies left the federal market. And if you look at women-owned small business firms, they saw a decrease of almost 1,000 companies leaving the federal market. Only the veteran-owned small businesses, interestingly enough, saw an increase in the numbers of folks in the marketplace. And about 92 more companies are in the federal marketplace that are considered themselves veteran-owned small businesses. This was, again, surprising because of the push by the last several administrations to really expand the marketplace. This is a contraction, and that's never a good thing, Eric.
And this data is not without dispute. Senator Ed Markey, ranking member of the Small Business Committee, seems to have a report out that contradicts some of this data. Why do you think that this data is at odds with what he's reporting?
We reported a couple of weeks ago that Senator Ed Markey, the ranking member of the Small Business Committee in the Senate, said that the environment for small firms has just been overly harsh. And Markey looked back from January 2025, so about 15 months. And again, Eric, this data from SBA only looks at the fiscal year, so October 1st to September 30th of 2024 into 2025. And what Markey found was the money going to small business contractors dropped by about $47 billion, and about 6,500 firms have left the federal market. The opposite is saying, well, the money, yes, did drop, but only a few $1 billion. And yes, firms have left, but not to the 6,500. So I think part of the rationale, and it's 100% not, you can't say for sure, but I think part of it is the time frame. Markey's looking at a 15, 16-month, January 2025 through June 2026, while the SBA is looking at, again, just fiscal year 2025. So I think that plays a big into it. And we know it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out, what the data tells us for fiscal 2026. We're only about halfway through, but we're already seeing a lot of drop in, again, small disadvantaged business 8A contracts. I've seen data from people in the federal community saying there's a bigger drop across the board for these companies too. And then you've also seen a lot of small business offices and agencies lose people, not being, they're not replacing people. And so there's less advocacy for small business contracting. And then the push for enterprise-wide contracts, those tend to be consolidated contracts that potentially could hurt small firms as well. So a lot of moving pieces here, Eric. It would be really interesting to see what the 2026 data tells us in about a year from now.
Federal News Network Executive Editor Jason Miller, thank you for the update on these numbers. We'll be back in touch, I'm sure, when the next fiscal year comes through.
And probably before, Eric. Lots to report on in the small business community. Always my pleasure.